Bonjour, je vous prie de vous asseoir.
Good morning. If you could kindly sit yourselves, please. Thank you.
Please, if you can sit down, we will start. Catherine Colonna, who is the Minister for Foreign Affairs of France, will join. She's a bit late, but she will join, but we will start without her because I guess you also have other schedules. I will speak in French. I'm sorry for English speakers. Bonjour à tous. Je suis Christophe Deloire, le président du Forum.
Good morning. I'm Christophe Deloire, president of the Forum for
secrétaire général de Reporters sans frontières.
Democracy.
Nous sommes
Secretary General for Reporters Without Borders. Today we are here for the third summit on information and democracy. It's a ministerial level summit. It's the third one. The first two took place on the margins of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and this was followed a launch during the 2019 General Assembly meeting of the Partnership for Information and Democracy, which brought together before this session 51 states, and another one will soon join, and the floor will be given first of all to the representatives of the two states that are joining today. 51 states joining or meeting up to provide democratic guarantees in the area of information. That is the purpose of this partnership, securing this right to information, which is understood as a right to reliable information. Communication development, the changes and overhauls in information and where it comes from, assumes that our laws have to change and adapt to respect and abide by and implement historic principles. And at this moment of full development of communication, all of the receivers, those who receive the information, do have rights, and this right is integrity of information. Without this, all of their rights could actually be put in jeopardy. We had met with Maria Ressa and 24 other members of the Commission on Information and Democracy. It was a civil society commission. They started the partnership, and this was precisely 5 years ago. We launched it in September 2018, actually, to be precise, and we met up 1 year after the first forum, Paris Peace Forum, to publish the declaration that then gave place to the partnerships. And since then, many events have happened. The partnership was signed by 30 or some states. I said this, there are 51 of them to date, and soon there will be 52 to have signed this partnership. We've also created a body for application. It's the Forum for Information and Democracy, managed by civil society, 11 organizations. The implementing of this partnership, and the organization has formulated hundreds of recommendations, one for regulations to respond to any question and to regulate things, and also provide transparency on the platforms and provide information on social accounts and algorithms, the plethora of algorithms, and very soon to respond to questions on artificial intelligence. There's a cohesive movement with civil society. We have summits and meetings that associate and bring together states. There have been very concrete meetings on very concrete subjects, and namely this partnership that has supported the certification press initiative. This is a multilateral democracy initiative with an original approach and that brings together governments and civil society to serve an end purpose, the same end purpose. Now, whilst we're waiting for the minister to arrive, and whilst we're waiting for the ministers that we're going to talk just after the Foreign Affairs Minister, if you allow me to change the agenda somewhat, I'm going to leave the floor to Maria Ressa. She has been there on each stage of the partnership, right from day one. Maria has also been a member of the Commission on Information and Democracy. She co-presided with Maria Ressa SACO, the first working group on information and criminology or crimes, and that happened actually right at the beginning of COVID. And she was also the member of the Observatory for Information and Democracy. It's a process that's very closely linked to Maria. And so thank you for being with us here today, Maria. I haven't introduced Maria Ressa. She is the founder of RAPLA in the Philippines. She is an executive, and she was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and winner in 2021. Thank you, Maria, for being here with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Christophe. I still don't have AI to plug in, so the words will come out in French, but I am sure that it's not going to take that long to have that happen. While we're waiting for the minister, please let me just summarize the problems that we're dealing with, right? We are here in a thinking slow process of policymaking and governance, right? Journalism is a thinking slow process. And yet, the information ecosystem, what connects us all together, is now the technology that spreads the information is a thinking fast structure. Meaning, and I'll just do this in 3 points. The first is that the greatest crisis we face, and we're seeing this play out in the Middle East, this is according to E.O. Wilson, who studied emergent behavior in ants. We can begin to look at emergent behavior. Sorry, I'm very geeky, but he said that the greatest crisis we face is our Paleolithic emotions, our medieval institutions, and our godlike technology. If you look at this, our thinking slow process of policy and governance do not stand a chance when the people we are trying to put together in a shared reality are being insidiously manipulated through our emotions. This is our biggest problem. And you know, there are 2 buckets of artificial intelligence that we have dealt with. We've talked a lot. Our AI charter is looking beyond generative AI, which was rolled out in November 2022, last year. But let's talk about the artificial intelligence that is fueling the distribution of information. In 2018, MIT said they did a study that showed that lies spread 6 times faster than facts. That one fundamental design choice, right? So this is structural. That design choice means that the world is upside down. That design choice is like being in, if you watch Stranger Things on Netflix, it's like we're literally in the upside down. It's like if you told your child, lie, I'll reward you. Keep lying, and I'm gonna keep rewarding you, right? What has that design choice done? It has led to, and I will use Sweden's VDEM report, last year, 60% of the world is under authoritarian rule. This year, in January, they put it at 72%. So I'll say the 3 sentences that we've said over and over. If you don't have facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. I don't know how you govern. I don't know how we can be journalists if every single person in our countries actually do not believe anything. We are more and more moving into this, and when I watch what is happening with the Middle East and the information warfare that our citizens are being manipulated specifically the 18 to 24 years old, right? Anyway, I can send the data. So I guess the last part there is, as we move into elections in 2024, Brazil, thank you. You got through. Poland was a bright light. But we cannot have integrity of elections if we don't have integrity of facts. So this is why we started working together, and it's been incredible to have 3 different things here in France. And shall I hand it back to you now? Is the minister here yet? Or I can keep telling you the problem. But this is the moment. For journalists, we are under attack on all sides. Even using a phrase like Hamas-run government of Gaza gets you attacked. using a phrase of pause or ceasefire gets you attacked online. And the people attacking are no longer governments. Is it connected to information operations? We're taking the data down now. But this is what we must protect: agency and free will. And that's what we hope to do.
Merci beaucoup, Maria. La ministre va arriver dans un instant.
Thank you very much, Maria. The Minister is going to arrive very soon. Just a quick comment about today's agenda. There will be a first session on Brazil, acceding, and Moldavia, and the partnership, and two roundtables, one on disinformation as a conflict with reactions from various ministers, and another one on the strengthening of partnerships and international cooperation for accessing quality information and managing democracy within the context of the digital world, with reactions, of course, and comments from ministers. And this makes me, or sets me in the right state to thank all of the ministers and representatives who are in this room, all of you, whatever reason you are here for and the role you have in this meeting. And I would like to thank you for being here. And I'm sure the minister will arrive in a few moments. Now, I wanted to say that this meeting is also organized with the governmental French Republic conference, a series of conferences that were set off or launched by Monsieur Macron, and they also relate to democracy and information in all its components, with its structures and the different layers of information and the different players within the information space or area, and the answers provided to questions that we have today. We need systemic responses, answers, and not responses or answers just to deal with specific issues. Maria Ressa works with the steering committee for these series of conferences, les États Généraux, and we're delighted to meet and talk and work with you on a French level. And I would like to welcome Camille, who is a member of an independent committee, and I would like to thank you, Camille François, for being here with us today. Thank you.
Madame la directrice, je suppose que la ministre va faire son entrée.
So, Director or President, I think that Mrs. Colonna, I think that the Minister is going to. So, thank you very much, President, for introducing the Minister, Mrs. Colonna. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I would like... I apologize, Mrs. Ressa, Nobel Prize winner. I apologize for being late, but I did turn up with music, and I'm delighted you started the session. The President of the Republic was surrounded by the guests of the first major session, and I didn't dare leave before the end of the first half of the first session. I'm delighted to be here with you, and I'm delighted to officially launch this session and our discussions with these few words. I would like to begin with the most important aspect, as far as I can see, and the most important also for those of you who work as journalists, by paying tribute to the action of those who take risks and who sometimes even risk their lives to tell us the truth and the reality of the situation, even if it is very difficult, sometimes or often, to provide information that's reliable and true, and this work of the journalist is essential for democracy. Now, I worked a few days ago at the Quai d'Orsay, and we were commemorating on the 2nd of November the International Day for the end of impunity for crimes committed against journalists, against the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs, and on this occasion I was able to hand over an award that we have called Anna Politovskaya Award, an Armenin Soldin, which is the prize for journalism and bravery to the Mexican journalist Marcela Turati. Some of you may know her. It was the first prize of this kind, and there will be others. It's a very newly created award, and every year it will reward the bravery of journalists, the bravery of those who take risks, and sometimes this is essential to defend high-quality information. And it's this bravery that Mrs. Turati displayed, despite all of the risks, and there are many risks in Mexico, as you know. And she wrote about the violence linked to drug trafficking and gangs, and she denounced the meanderings, and it's a very diplomatic word I'm using, of the meanderings of drug trafficking. This bravery also led to another award with a special mention from the jury, and that is your colleague, journalist, French-Afghan journalist Morteza Leboutier, who very recently was able to come out of Afghanistan at great risk, and some of us know more or less how. So, special award from the jury, and it's this bravery that gave him these 284 days of imprisonment by the Taliban, or detention by the Taliban, with, as you know, violence and torture carried out against him, with these 284 days of which shows you how the daily life of Afghan people live their life, so terrible living conditions for men and women in Afghanistan, especially women. Now, if I widen the scope, unfortunately in September, the attacks against journalists and the restrictions on freedom of expression and freedom of writing are actually increasing in that part of the world. You know the figures for the number of deaths and casualties and victims, but it goes beyond that. There is also a great deal of information manipulation, and there is also propaganda and propagation of false and fake information. There's deliberate fake information, and this propagation and propaganda has become a current and common weapon in these asymmetrical type of wars, and this is something that we have to contend with in our world today. And France has not escaped this phenomenon. I'm not saying that that France is participating in it. Up until today, it has not been the case, and I will ensure it is not. But it has been victim of this type of fake information, as others have. And you've probably seen this. I hope you've seen this. And if you haven't, please read the press release that we published last night. We have, or even yesterday, had to denounce publicly the fact that Russia has aided in the real sense and abstract sense in the propagation of anti-Semitic behavior in our country. Lease the press release. For those of you who follow these questions to do with fake information and manipulation of information, it is very detailed, and it shows how it has been proved And it's very rare that a state hands over an action and attributes an action to another state. We can do it, and we regret having to do this, but we actually have done this, and the proof is undeniable. Now, beyond France or Europe, in the Ukraine or in the Near East, Middle East, and in the Sahel, these phenomena are spreading. I'm not saying that they are generalized, but they are spreading too much. And I wish that our meeting will enable us to deal with disinformation in armed conflicts. We will listen to the opinions of Courtney Reddish, the journalist, and for this reason, France has launched the Partnership for Information and Democracy. It was launched in 2019. I applaud the work that has been carried out with Reporters Without Borders. Thank you very much for being alongside us, Christophe, today, but also thank you for your daily commitment, and thank you for everything that has been achieved over the past 4 years. Progress is real and true. I remind you of this. 52 states have rejoined this initiative, and this initiative brings together all of the stakeholders, states, international organizations, but also civil society, of course, and even the private sector. All work concurrently and convergently to defend freedom of speech and information and opinion, freedom of the press and access to free, plural and reliable information. And in this respect, I am delighted that the Minister for Foreign Affairs for Moldavia is present with us, dear Nico, and the Secretary of State for Brazil in charge of digital technology, Mr. Marcio Bicau, whereas Moldavia, of course, has just joined the partnership. So these two accessions testify with all of the others to the relevance of the principles carried to the fore by the partnership and the increase in interest for this work. A couple of words on the success of this partnership. First of all, the Forum on Information and Democracy, launched in the same year by Reporters Without Borders and 10 other members of civil society to implement these principles and partnerships, but also the International Fund for Public Interest Media and Press, which is something Madame Ressa mentioned. And I would like to say hello to Mrs. Ressa and say we are delighted for her to be here. And this has contributed to developing this new deal for journalism, just as the mechanism for independent certification, which is called an initiative for trustworthy journalism, and it was also launched by RSF, so Reporters Without Borders, which is really, I'm really advertising the merits of Reporters Without Borders today. So to promote quality journalism and trustworthy journalism adopted, and this has been signed and adopted by over 100 newspapers. And I would also like to say hello to Mr. Brad Smith from Microsoft, who's also here with us, who is not here, but he is represented here in the name of Microsoft. And this summer, Microsoft adopted this certification mechanism, and that's why I wanted to pay tribute to him. Now, we're carrying on to obtain new achievements. We have the observatory that has just been launched for information and democracy. They've just started their work, and it will enable us to analyze the major trends for information and information spaces, and it will provide real support to the civil society organizations brought together around different topics: freedom of expression and quality information. These partnerships and these concrete cooperations will also enable us to strengthen responses provided by multilateral associations and states interested in rising to the same challenges. And this is the meaning of the final declaration of commitment that France is suggesting it be adopted on the occasion of this third-year summit. And so this is something that you need to read very carefully, and I wish for us to adopt it. On the international level, the partnership, the forum and the observatory, or the watch organism, will have to be on board and talk about leading integrity of information. And the World Compact are two other initiatives suggested by the Secretary General of the United Nations in order for the future or the next summit of September of next year. And then partnerships and fora of all of these countries will have to adopt regulatory frameworks and practices on a national national level, so that as far as France is concerned, you know, the President of the Republic announced a few weeks ago the conferences on information and democracy that will come to an end in May of next year with concrete actions in order to ensure right to information in the 21st century, which is a century that is already very much on its way, and we're very nearly at a quarter of the century. Time flies, but we need to improve very many aspects. Christophe Delot, who's present, I'm mentioning him once again. Christophe Delot is the Secretary General for the conferences on the subject, and it will bring us to more details on the subject. And I would like to finish on my part by talking about the media and development strategy for 2023 to 2027 that will make the development of the media and press a core subject for policy and development for France. And Marie-Christine Sarrigos, here present, will be able to talk about this later. I don't know if I've mentioned everyone. I hope I've mentioned almost everyone. I'd also like to pay tribute to what you do, and I also like to encourage you for this, or during this session, to recommend to us how we can go even further than we already have gone. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, you can rely on the commitment of France to continue acting for an area of information that is free, democratic, and trustworthy. Do this as we do this, in consultation and with civil society, in cooperation also with the private sector, and I think that we can say that we need them, and they need to be part of these main principles. And hand in hand, we will seek to make the area of transparency and freedom of press move forward, and truth. We will ensure that it comes to the fore. I would like to give the floor now to the Vice Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs and European integration. As you saw earlier on, I summarized it, but there are many things. Dear Nico, dear colleague, dear friend, thank you very much for the accession of your country within this partnership, and now I'm going to hand the floor to you.
Merci beaucoup, chère Catherine. Madame la ministre, vous avez des très bons microphones.
Dear Catherine, thank you very much, Minister. Excellent microphones, right? Dear President, dear Christophe, I have two speeches, so I'll be very brief now, and then I'll delve into further detail later on. I'm very pleased to be part of this summit to announce the fact that the Republic of Moldova has joined the Partnership for Information and Democracy. This is a platform that represents an opportunity to defend our fundamental rights and the freedom of speech and expression and opinion, and also to promote our values and principles. Becoming a member of this partnership is happening at a very difficult time in Europe and in the Middle East due to the pressure that we all feel with the situation with Russia and Ukraine. And when it comes to disinformation and all of the threats that we're being faced with, that's just part of a much broader spectrum, which is called the hybrid war. And this is being used by various countries. And in the case of Moldova in particular, we're particularly concerned by what Russia is doing in our region. And as part of that broad spectrum, where disinformation is one problem amongst many others, since there are other tools which are being used to destabilize democracies such as ours. And here I'm referring to cyber attacks, to energy blackmailing, but as part of that broader spectrum, I'm also referring to military pressure and tension. And in the case of Ukraine, we saw that this escalated very quickly with the Russian aggression. Let us always remember that this is the most major war on the European territory since the Second World War. So this is the context we are looking at. So I think it's fully justified for us to speak about the fact that very often those who generate disinformation, so very often we talk about, for example, terrorist organizations, but those who generate disinformation are the political branch of Russia, so a country that's attacking many countries in different ways, and that includes Moldova and France. In Moldova, the current context is rather challenging, as I said, but rest assured, we are moving ahead, and for the past 30 years, we have shown that our society is firmly committed to supporting and to maintaining our country in the family of democratic countries. And in Moldova, every change and transition in government for the past 31 years have happened following elections, and these elections were always held each and every single time. Now, of course, we have our own challenges, but this has been our democratic journey. This illustrates that Moldova is a firm member of that European family of democracies, and this is something that's been really appreciated on an international level. And here we're very pleased to see that over the past couple of years, Christophe, a number of colleagues and many other international organizations, not just Reporters Without Borders, have acknowledged that progress. And in the past couple of years, in terms of the freedom of media freedom, I believe that we have been improving our ranking by 71 ranks for the past 2 years in the ranking made by Reporters Without Borders. So there you have it. You can make progress even in a very vulnerable context, and that goes to show our commitment to these values. And just 2 days ago, the European Commission recommended for Moldova to start the negotiations to become a member of the European Union, especially given our track record in terms of freedom of the media and freedom of speech. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, dear Nico. Can I please give the floor to the Vice Minister for Political Affairs at the Federative Republic of Brazil, Carlos Marcio Bicalho Cozende. Thank you very much for becoming a member of the partnership.
To join this partnership. Our recent inclusion in the partnership reflects our deep commitments to the fundamental principles of freedom of expression, access to free, plural, and reliable information. So Brazil reaffirms the importance of international cooperation in tackling the challenges of disinformation and hate speech in digital environments. We hope to work with all relevant actors to promote and protect the circulation of reliable information, as well as to encourage the principles of transparency, responsibility, and neutrality in virtual information and communication activities. We believe that information is a crucial pillar for the healthy functioning of any democracy. It empowers citizens to make informed decisions, promotes government transparency, and strengthens accountability. We view disinformation, fake news, hate speech as big threats to human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, as illustrated by the events that happened in Brazil on January the 8th past. For that reason, we fight against those menaces as a priority for the Brazilian government. At the same time, we must strive to defend the right to freedom of expression and opinion, as well as the work of journalists. Brazil plays a leading role in multilateral fora on those subjects, including the impact of new emerging technologies and the right to privacy. We defend that the same rights that exist offline should, of course, be applied online. We believe that the partnership's member countries can play a key role in strengthening broad processes promoted by different agencies of the UN system. And in this context, we welcome the Secretary General's proposed establishment of a voluntary code of conduct for information integrity on digital platforms. Furthermore, the Brazilian presidency of the G20 will bring to the table the discussion on information integrity as well as on the progressive deployment of new technologies such as artificial intelligence that should benefit countries, help bridge digital gaps, and contribute to sustainable development. We hope that this platform will contribute to reaching multilateral understanding in relation to the future space and its economic and social impacts. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, dear Minister. Over to Christophe Deloire now, who will moderate this first roundtable. Thank you very much, Minister. My role will today I'll be your timekeeper and accelerator. Apologies, but I was just asked to keep up with the time we were allotted. So moving on to our first roundtable on the topic of disinformation in times of conflict. We're not going to be sharing too many figures here. You've seen the intensity of disinformation on the Gaza-Israel conflict right now. A policy brief with just 10 points was disseminated to the member states of the partnership, and Courtney Radsch, who is a member of the Syrian Committee of the Observatory on Information and Democracy, will now take the floor. Thank you, Courtney, in advance. Please be as brief as you can. Thank you so much, Christophe. Thank you so much, Minister Nicolas, for giving me the floor. I'll speak in English now.
Make the main message of my remarks the fact that we need an ecosystem approach to how we pursue disinformation online, because it is linked to offline events. It is about the information environment and the role of the state. And information, it's not just about facticity or the factual role. Information and communication plays a cultural, an identity role. And so we also need to understand that as we seek to understand how the current structure of the information and communication space and the failure of self-regulation has led to a crisis that is threatening democracy around the world, as well as undermining health and peace. Democratic countries have allowed a handful of gatekeeper platforms to become so big and powerful that they are able to set the rules of the public sphere and deter meaningful regulation. And these challenges are further exacerbated during times of crisis. Propaganda campaigns. We talk about disinformation, but there is a long history of propaganda in our information ecosystems. Let's learn and understand this. Internet shutdowns, media manipulation, and targeting of journalists. We know that information warfare is an explicit part of Russia's military doctrine, yet its state media channels amassed millions of followers on social media. China, meanwhile, owns the most popular youth social media platform and is investing in large language models that regurgitate technologically coherent propaganda. Tech companies are once again winging it as they respond to massive geopolitical crises. Think Afghanistan and the Taliban, Myanmar and the military junta. Facebook devotes only 10% of its resources to content moderation in languages other than English. And we have ostensibly democratic countries shutting down the internet. The volume of false information and propaganda online has dramatically increased, while the viability of news media has deteriorated amid monopoly rents demanded by these same platforms who use media content for free to create value for their services, while siphoning digital advertising revenue and constraining journalism to the logic of clicks and engagement rather than public interest. This dynamic is only going to be worsened by generative artificial intelligence, which is built on pirated content used without permission or compensation, and will amplify the harms of the current environment because AI embeds the past in the present and the future. So large language models that are trained on low quality information like propaganda, hate speech, and violence will not only perpetuate these harms, but degrade the foundational systems of the AI era. This is why it's very important that the Observatory on Information and Democracy has launched an important initiative to understand and synthesize existing research and data around the world on 3 priority areas: AI, media in the digital age, and data governance, because we want to offer policymakers evidence-based global assessments of what research says so that you guys can develop better interventions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So I invite ministers to react to this with 2 minutes long answers, or shorter. And the floor is yours, Nico. Vice Minister.
Yes, okay. Merci. So I will be very brief. I mentioned that disinformation is part of a hybrid warfare spectrum. And we need to look at these things in an integrated manner. And very often in a country like ours, around actually 23rd of November last year, we had a major blackout most of the day caused by Russia's bombing of the electricity grid in Ukraine. And on a day like that, you discover very quickly that if you want to fight disinformation, you need electricity, so that you can tweet, so that the population reads your tweets, and so that they believe your tweets. And that is why the ability to ensure the socioeconomic progress of societies that are under stress is a key ingredient of the capacity to combat disinformation. And this is a larger part of the deal. The second point is that we see that disinformation and the challenges and what is a threat changes. I will remind everyone that just 2 years ago, we had in Europe, Russia Today France, Russia Today Germany, Russia Today UK, and many other outfits. And at the time, it was considered acceptable, but in light of the aggression against Ukraine, this was very clear that this is not a media outlet and it does not deserve to be treated in the same way. But of course, besides Russia Today outfits, there's multiple other ways that try to destabilize democracy. The third element, in a country that is small and not endowed with a lot of resources, one challenge we have when it comes to fighting democracy is just insufficient capacity to generate alternative high-quality content on TV, on series, on formats, not just online. And that is why it's very important, while we talk about ways to restrain the capacity of disinformation actors to act, it's extremely important to generate alternative, attractive, high-quality content. So we've been engaged, for example, in a partnership with Arte, with support in France and Germany, just to get movies and documentaries that we can put on screen in order to support local TV stations to gain market share against Russian disinformation attempts, which also come on TV. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And
thank you so much, Nico. La parole est à Joao Brandt, qui est le secrétaire national
Secretary of Digital Policies at the Secretariat of Social Communications
we
of
will
the
speak to the
Presidency.
second roundtable, but I'm glad to speak now. It's up to you, really. Yeah, we see the need for the well. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We're really glad to be part of the partnership. And we understand that the partnership can play a key role, valuing multilateral dialogue and the possibilities of cooperation between the signatory countries. This dialogue must take place through permanent dialogue with the Forum, with the recent created Observatory, but also through initiatives taken directly within the scope of the partnership. The year of 2024, particularly, will hold a set of initiatives that deserve to be monitored and discussed in this space, including the definition of a code of conduct for digital platforms by the United Nations, the implementation of UNESCO guidelines on regulating digital platforms, the Global Digital Compact, and the Summit for the Future. Within the scope of the G20, whose pro-tempore presidents will be in charge of Brazil from December 1st, for the first time, the topic of information integrity will be one of the priority topics in the Digital Economy Working Group. And so we invite signatory countries to follow closely this debate. The decision of bringing this initiative to the G20 comes from the recognition that disinformation and hate speech affect directly political and economic stability and foster violent extremism. And if this is true for the whole world, there is a need for discussing this topic beyond like-minded countries, like the ones that we are gathering here, and to build a broader common ground for the debate. And we should start to define this common ground by the common acknowledgement of the need of tackling platforms and accountable power and to stop violent extremism online. We really thank for the opportunity of sharing Brazil's perspectives. We're going to be holding an event on information integrity probably in the beginning of May next year that we want to be a joint initiative with the countries involved here and an opportunity to discuss that further with the players that are really pushing the agenda of information integrity internationally. Thank you very much. We'll be glad to collaborate.
Merci beaucoup, Joao. Désolé pour le changement d'ordre.
Thank you so much, Joao.
La parole vient ensuite à Monsieur Ahmed Hussein.
Over to Mr. Ahmed Hussein, Minister of International Development in Canada. Minister, the floor is yours.
For hosting us for the third summit on for information and democracy, this is a really important discussion. The discussion during this panel certainly echoes what Canada has heard time and again when disinformation has wreaked havoc in our lives, from the pandemic to elections, to crisis and conflicts. Countering disinformation is a challenge and is challenging for all of us. And it is clear that we need more government intervention to counter disinformation and uphold information integrity, all the while respecting human rights. So you see in many conflict settings, we see how illiberal regimes not only use disinformation as a tool for propaganda, but they also stifle dissent and persecute those who are in opposition. But they do that sometimes under the guise of countering disinformation, which makes it even harder for populations who seek to know the truth and find out the facts. We see a powerful battleground for democracy within information ecosystems, and we need to engage more effectively in partnership with one another. As part of these efforts, Canada and the Netherlands launched the Global Declaration on Information Integrity Online in September. This declaration aims to establish a set of high-level international committees for governments to uphold information integrity online. It is a concrete step towards developing international norms for addressing information integrity online, one that is rooted in our common democratic values. Canada believes a coordinated approach with governments and societies is the best way to counter this disinformation, an approach that keeps respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law at the center of everything that we do. Our citizens deserve to be informed, they deserve to be engaged, they deserve to have access to facts, and it is vital that governments behave responsibly by investing in civic awareness, in education, lifelong media, and digital literacy. And this can help increase the public's resilience against disinformation and encourage them to behave responsibly online. So we welcome the research and advocacy work of the Forum on Information and Democracy and the Observatory, and we look forward to the future outcomes of this really, really important work. Thank you very much. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. Over to Mr. Edward Ulisius, Vice Minister for Political Affairs in the Czech Republic. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Minister, for inviting us.
I appreciate very much the discussion we have here today. We have been shown by Russians that the disinformation is and will be an integral part of the hybrid warfare of our days. Both disinformation and misinformation clearly play a crucial role in shaping views on the Gaza war too. And the magnitude of the disinformation threat shows us that our responsibility is to devote to create resilient societies, defend the targeted institutions and groups, and punish information aggressors. In the times when the disinformation is seriously threatening our democratic societies, we must continue to actively engage with social media platforms to live up to their commitments in tackling war propaganda, the hateful and illegal speech, and incitement to hatred. We should keep both individual and collective international efforts, focus on strengthening them, but also keep identifying possible new methods to identify, prevent, and also counter disinformation. To effectively address the foreign information manipulation means that our countries and all us together must go beyond simple monitor and report approach, but include development and implementing of strategies to counter the threat of disinformation. What the Czech Republic and my ministry is doing is a dynamic data-based strategic communication where we use various communication tools to counter hostile disinformation narratives in Czechia and abroad. To conclude, just to say what we should do is to encourage the analytical capacities, focus on documentation of the information threats and sharing and learning together among ourselves from those who have most experiences, most direct experiences, and pay close attention to the ongoing disinformation campaigns everywhere in Africa, Latin America, Central Asia, Europe. Just not let the focus out of this issue. Next year, very important elections will be happening in Europe, in the United States, in Russia, and to tackle the interferences in the election processes, we really have to keep our attention very high. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. Merci à vous. Sorry.
Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the second chapter of this summit on the strengthening of partnerships and international relationships to secure our future. So, the Journalism Trust Initiative, for example, was created to make sure that journalists can securely work in their ecosystem, and now there are close to 1,000 media outlets committed as part of this initiative throughout the world. Microsoft, for example, also has granted support to this initiative, and also when it comes to legislations, much has been done with public regulations which may foster self-regulation, and that is more and more the case in European regulation. We have a partnership, as you know, that's very concrete in its actions, cooperation amongst stakeholders, something that's happening internationally from north to south. And in fact, we'd be looking to establish a world conference of parties on media outlets. So we are also here to foster local initiatives by encouraging the exchange of good practices and best practices to best respond to every national situation on the basis of partnerships. So I will now give the floor to our first speakers of this round table, with Maria Ressa, Courtney Ratch as well, and Elza Pilivshovsky. And Marie-Christine, starting with you. Thank you so much, Christophe. When you're a journalist today, as several people have said already, and as you said, Maria Ressa, is something that's very difficult, very challenging. It takes a lot of courage. We are confronted with so many problems, such as being put in jail, death, sometimes, as we've seen in the current conflict in the Middle East, and online as well. We are faced with so many threats and the current context of massive disinformation, this hybrid war, as said the Minister of Moldova just now, goes to create a very difficult environment indeed as journalists. But beyond the question of disinformation, as we've seen in the current conflict in the Middle East, viewpoints are more and more polarized and extreme. And on top of this, you have AI, as recalled just moments ago. So we might be tempted to be completely discouraged, but let us hold on to a few simple ideas. 3 words for you: ethics, partnerships, regulations. First of all, ethics. Well, we absolutely need to restore the trust of citizens in reference media outlets. Media outlets can only be credible if they're free and if they provide reliable information. For democracies, that's fundamental. That's how we can really bring citizens together. We need fully independent media outlets, and the public service here can really stand first. And also you need citizens that are enlightened, and the JTI, well, all of our journalists participated in this initiative. There were 200 questions to answer, so quite a lengthy questionnaire. It was a cumbersome process. It was a very serious process, and we went through that process because you need these benchmarks and milestones. Second, partnerships. By standing together, we can be stronger. So media outlets need to stand together to better resist and stand up for themselves. We work a lot with Africa, with partner radio stations. We have young journalists who are really here to do their work seriously. We need to stand by them. Within the French public service, we do a lot of work on AI, not to be completely overcome by this next new wave. We also work with the UER in Europe and with the Union of French Media Outlets and with the DG8. Hopefully this is a concept we are familiar with. 8 partners are part of that process. And when it comes to regulations, there are 4 things that I wanted to highlight, 4 key highlights here. First of all, I think we need, with the JTI, we need to be in a position to be visible. We also need to break down those filter bubbles. These can lead to further isolation, so we need to really break down these algorithm biases, and let us not leave the platforms in charge of that. And we need to make it compulsory for platforms to moderate content. We all already moderate content, but they need to do so as well. And we need to domesticate AI. If we can do all of that, then we can stand firm against disinformation and better foster peace throughout the world. Thank you so much for your attention.
I'm going to leave the floor to Elsa Pilichowski, who's from the OECD, and she's going to give a very short presentation. Couple of minutes then. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, just very quickly, I would like to tell you that the OECD is very happy with this 3rd year of this summit on partnership and supports the forum, the Watch Observatory, with whom we are in close collaboration on the subject of disinformation. The information space today is worldwide, global, it's no longer national, so dual importance to promote its integrity and foster partnership between nations and multilateral bilateral partners. On our side, at the OECD, we've created and set up a centre that brings together various government initiatives on policies to do with disinformation, in partnership still with the forum, of course. We are keeping the best practices with three main topics: improving the quality of the information environment. We follow the effects of disinformation in the European Union, strengthening social and resilience and resistance. The Canadian experience, of course, was underlined this earlier on. And then there is the modernising of the measures for public governance and institutional framework by putting in place coordinations and strategies within government to strengthen the integrity of information. On these three topics, there are huge exchanges of best practices. It's an area that is very dynamic, and it's the moment that's ideal for countries to come together and work on this subject. Just to tell you, we have, after this forum on Monday and Tuesday, a major conference on disinformation that the forum will take part in, and we are also going to try to deal and broach the subject of linking up with countries that are emerging on the African continent and the Americas region to create a framework that will enable the governments to commit to the actions that they need to put in place. Thank you very much, and it was fantastic to be able to talk to you and be here. Thank you for doing this in a very synthetic way. Maria, you now have the...
Since we launched all of this on very concrete things.
So first, thank you so much. I gave you all the problems at the very beginning before Minister Colonna came in. We have now launched the Charter on AI and Journalism. There are 10 points there. Journalists are not the problem. We have standards and ethics, right? We are under attack. Let me quickly go through the three things that are coming out in the Paris Peace Forum this time around. Journalists cannot do this alone. We need you. And let me point out first something signed by 300 Nobel laureates, civil society groups, journalists, and different NGOs all around the world. It's the 10-point action plan, a second one. But please, the three buckets of that is stop surveillance for profit. It is a business model. It is power and money. The second is stop coded bias. If you are a woman, LGBTQ+, if you are marginalized in the real world, you are further marginalized online. Gender disinformation is the precursor for the destruction of democratic processes. And finally, the last one, journalism as an antidote to tyranny. Hand in hand with that, we have announcing today the International Fund for Public Interest Media, which with many of your help has raised $50 million in the last year. This is now rolling out. It is going to news organizations, a lot in the global south, so that we can help the hemorrhage. We can help stop that. Thank you, governments, for helping with this. And the last one is État Général. I can never say this in French. I need to learn French. EGI is the way I would say it. France's initiative to actually look at new definitions. We're stepping on the rubble of the world that was. We must create a better world, and that is the opportunity. Thank you.
GI is the acronym for États généraux de l'information, Estates General of Information, the national process that was launched and that is derivated from the Partnership on Information Democracy at the national level in France. Merci beaucoup, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. I am now going to conclude this summit meeting. We would have loved for it to have lasted longer, and I would like to say that the partnership has had a lot of effect on real events. It's been able to impose a vision and its language and expressions, and it's been able to develop concepts, ideas within the context of the Partnership for Information and Democracy, the right for information as we think of it, the idea of a structural and structuring platform. All of this is now used by different states and governments. It's integrated into laws, and many provisions that have been put forward within the context of the reports from the Forum on Information and Democracy have been integrated incorporated into European laws. There are very concrete initiatives that are developed. We were talking about the Journalism Trust Initiative, GTI. The Partnership for Information and Democracy are political intentions which are based on political ideals and in terms of right to information, and very concrete actions with this desire really to ensure on a multilateral and bilateral level, very concrete actions to change the situation, because of course there will have to be changes to be made to be able to blow democracy back into technology and to ensure that technology serves democracy and not the opposite. Thank you very much to everyone. I would like to thank you greatly for participating. We have a great deal of work on the table to finish, and you can rely on us to finish it and carry on, continue, and we'll see you very soon next year.